What's up, everyone? A couple Coyote River back here again with another video, and this is going to be a continuation of the two-part mini-series that I started with my first upload. The first video was Love Yourself. What is love? Part 1. So if you haven't watched that video yet, I'd recommend you go back and watch that one first. That way you have a better understanding of what I'm going to be discussing in this video. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. A little bit about myself. Again, my name is River. I am an occultist, mystic, practicing magician. Do both white magic, black magic, gray magic, you name it. Anything magic, I probably do it. Alright, so without further ado, jumping right into the topic of today's video. What is love? Part 2. So in the previous video, I discussed primarily self-love and cultivating self-love. Love yourself, right? Doing things that are uncomfortable, but you know will be beneficial to you. Things of that nature, right? It's a small recap, essentially. Now, today's video, again, is going to be about loving others. And how do you love others? Well, there's different ways you can love others. If you're familiar, there's the different love languages. There's physical touch, there's quality time spent together, there's gifts. I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, but there's this 3 right there. So there's different ways of loving others. You can give someone a gift as an expression of love. You can, spend quality time with them as an expression of love, right? And these are just the 5 love languages that are more so related to like friendships and romantic relationships and things of that nature. So I'm not going to go too deep onto that. But what I do want to do is to share my personal philosophy on what it means to love others. So loving others is ultimately accepting them for as they are, not wishing they were any different, right? I'm actually going to read a quote from Robert Greene. He's wrote a few great books, 48 Laws of Power, The Laws of Human Nature, The Art of Seduction. A few really good books that I do recommend, all of which I just said. Great author, very valuable information. You won't regret reading any of his books. Anyway, so another book too, Mastery. That's a good one. I haven't read that one yet. That one's still on my list. Anyway, so this is a quote by him. Interactions with people are the major source of emotional turmoil, but it doesn't have to be that way. The problem is that we are continually judging people, wishing they were something that they are not. We want them to think and act a certain way, most often the way we think and act. And because this is not possible, because everyone is different, we are continually frustrated and upset. Instead, see other people as phenomena, as neutral, as comets or plants. They simply exist. Work with what they give you instead of resisting and trying to change them. Make understanding people a fun game, the solving of puzzles. It is all part of the human comedy. Robert Greene. So, with that said, I want to discuss that and break that down a little bit. Right? So, I'm going to use, let's just say, maybe you have a partner, right? And they do something that bothers you. They have a little quirk. Maybe they're constantly picking at their face. Or maybe they're, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of different just little quirks that people do that bother us for honestly no good reason, right? So learning to accept them for as they are and attempting to understand them, try and put yourself in their shoes. Where are they coming from, right? And I'm not saying to do this for everybody because it can be a little draining, but those that you truly care about, right? Do this for them. Also do it for yourself too, right? Because the more you're able to understand people, the more you're able to understand yourself. And the more you're able to understand yourself, the more you're able to understand people. As above, so below. As within, as without. It's this basic universal principle. And loving others, especially when they do things that piss us off, it can be hard, right? It can be difficult. However, once again, when we learn to cultivate a sense of empathy and put ourselves in their shoes and ask ourselves, maybe, what is it that they've gone through that causes them to act this way? And it can just lead to you accepting them for as they are. Now, if you're in a toxic relationship and they're abusing you and they're emotionally manipulating you and they're gaslighting you and they're doing all these terrible things, then, one, the loving thing to do for yourself would be to get out of that relationship. And that might be hard for a lot of people because they have that attachment. And that we'll go into that in a separate video. And then another loving thing to do for the person, for that person, and for that abusive partner, a loving thing to do for them would be to leave and never come back. Because then, it can, I'm not going to say it always will, but it can cause them, catalyst, to go into a state of introspection and ask themselves, okay, what was I doing wrong that led to them leaving me? Again, this isn't always going to happen 100%, 100% of the time. Obviously, there's a lot of people out there who are very attached to who they are, and they're not willing to make a change. And it's not your responsibility to change anybody, right? A lot of these people, they get into these relationships with an abusive partner or spouse, and there's this dynamic of them wanting to save them, right? Wanting to change them, constantly ignoring the red flags and choosing to see the good in them, even though they're doing all this heinous shit to you. And so, being able to love others, it comes in a wide variety of flavors. Like I said, it could be love languages, it could be what I just mentioned. I'm not going to say it again. If you want to watch the part again, feel free to rewind. However, at the end of the day, we're all looking for love. And I'm going to read a little something from one of my books here. This is something I wrote last year. Almost a year to date, actually. Tomorrow will be officially a year since I wrote this. Love is a lot of things. It's suffering. It's giving. It's resting. It's eating. Obviously, we can see that there are all sorts of love that we both give and receive. However, what happens when what we think is love is actually just lust? It can be said that enjoying a fatty, greasy meal could be a lustful act if that's all you ever eat. But at the same time, we do these things out of a deeper craving for connection with ourselves as well as others. Our brains are literally supercomputers that never turn off until we're 6 feet under. This amazing gift records everything we experience, constantly working both consciously and unconsciously in order to make connections and constantly evolve to grow us into who we're meant to be as spirits. So, I'm actually going to break that down a little bit for you guys here. I still need to break this down a little bit too, so I'm going to get back into that in a second. I'm a little over. I had a long day at work, so I'm a little tired, but we're getting our message out. That's what matters. So, what happens when we think is love is actually just lust. I want to break that down real quick. So, you can meet someone at a club or a bar or something like that and have a nice conversation with them and think that you're in love with them, right? However, 90% of the time, that's not going to be the case, right? I do believe in love at first sight. It's very rare. However, it does happen. It may not necessarily always lead to a romantic relationship either, right? It can lead to a very fruitful friendship, right? Love doesn't always necessarily mean romance. And so, I'm going to touch on this briefly because the main topic of this video is loving others, but I'm also only going to touch on this briefly. So, lust does not equal love. Lust can lead into love at times, but majority of the time, it doesn't, from my personal experience. And if it does, it's still a very fine line you're walking, because it's like when you build a relationship on lust and then try to find a love later, it's like building a house with a foundation on sand. A few waves and the ocean's gonna wash it away into the sea. Anyway, circling back, I want to touch on this because this is a very profound quote. So the problem is that we are, and this excerpt from this. The problem is that we are continually judging people, wishing they were something that they are not. So this goes back into accepting people for as they are, even though you may not necessarily appreciate them as they are. You may not agree. Accepting them as they are is still very important, right? Now, I'm not saying to go do nothing, right? Like I said, if you're in an abusive relationship, accept that person for as they are. Stop trying to change them and get out of there. Take yourself to higher places. Instead, see other people as phenomena, as neutral as comets or plants. They simply exist. Work with what they give you instead of resisting and trying to change them. I really want to beat that point in. Loving others is not trying to change them. You may have the best intentions in mind, yes. However, that person is not going to change unless they want to change for themselves. So you can't try and force this, try and constantly force this onto them. It's going to end up pushing them away even further. Right? Or it might end up leading to more abuse, or whatever the situation may be. There's so many different scenarios that I can't even list them all. I don't even want to list them all. I don't even want to think of them all, because it would just be overwhelming, right? I'd be sitting here for 5 hours talking about a whole bunch of different scenarios, and that's not what I'm here to do. I'm here to give you practical advice and guidance and information that you can take out and apply and get results. So I'm going to start wrapping it up in the next minute and a half or so. Just kind of wrapping the video up into a nutshell. Loving others is accepting them for as they are. And while it may not be easy to accept them for as they are, understanding that they have their story, their traumas, their just their whole life experience, right? That has shaped them into who they are in that very moment. So if you're trying to change them into someone that they're not, you're just going to end up frustrated. So the loving thing to do for them would just to be, don't try and change them. Focus on changing yourself. It's an ebb and a flow, right? It's the yin and the yang, because you'll realize, whenever you're changing yourself, whenever you're cultivating self-love, and you're working to change yourself, you're improving yourself, you're building discipline, right? You're becoming a more evolved version of you. Well, those around you who notice, they're going to start to notice things change, and some of them might beat on you for it. Some of them, they might make fun of you. Others, they're gonna come to you and be like, "Hey, man, you've been doing something. You look different. You look really good. Like you look like you've been doing really well. What have you been doing?" And then you can take that as you take the opportunity to then give them information, advice, whatever it may be, that they can then take and apply in their lives so that they can change for the better. Right? Change happens from within. Right? It happens from within. So I'm gonna wrap the video up right here, guys. Leave a like below. Make sure you hit that subscribe notification bell so you are alerted whenever I release a new video, which is around this time. It's gonna be around. I'm gonna do my best to do every day. However, obviously life happens. Might not always be able to meet that quota I set for myself. So minimum, I want to upload 5 videos a week, 5 to 6 videos a week. I'll try and do 7 days a week. We'll see how that goes. And yeah, with that said, I want to thank you all for tuning in and listening to me talk and just present my personal philosophy, ideas, perspectives. I hope you guys got a lot of value from this. Again, leave a like, comment, subscribe if you feel so inclined to. And I will see you on the next video. Peace.